Good evening and welcome to Gramma's Attic Music Review. We have such a great show for you tonight. A little different from normal. You won't be hearing any singing, and it's nice to switch things up a little bit. I just want to thank the Music Now Foundation for sponsoring this show and for being there for the kids and the music. And tonight on our show, we have versatility at its best, if I do say so myself. We have with us Mr. Glen Harding, and he is what I would term a virtuoso piano player. He covers all the bases. He plays blues and jazz and ambient and classical, and you name it, he plays it. And because this show is not about me, it is about the music, now I turn the music over to Mr. Glen Harding.
Contest to name that song because it doesn't have a name. It needs one. This might be called the Kansas City style, a bit of Johnson and Albert Ammons, those guys from the Midwest. All parts of the country had their own way of playing the blues and boogie-woogie, and the New Orleans school was a little more Latin influence, and we have what we call the Rumba Boogie, which I opened up with. The boogie-woogie could be kind of the same feeling. They have slow boogie and fast boogie, but the rumba gives it that kick. Music, and he really didn't want it to be jazzed up. We'll talk a little bit about that. And this is the Scott Joplin really hated what Jelly Roll Morton was doing with his music, which was jazzing it up. The jazz age was 1905. Jelly Roll Morton, played some New Orleans. Microphone.
Live TV, there's nothing like it.
Out with the old.
And
in
in
with
with the new.
All right.
I love Scott Joplin, by the way.
Ah, yeah, pretty hard to beat.
Yeah.
I do have a confession to make that I lied. That
You
wasn't
lied?
really the Jelly Roll Morton version per se. There are recordings of Jelly Roll, and that was my take on it, a very, very simplified take. So it's not quite fair to blame that on Jelly Roll Morton, but I'm trying to give you the idea that that's what they did when they jazzed things up. Joplin wanted everything straight, like this. And you'll hear modern players sometimes when they play ragtime, they'll swing it. They'll go. Joplin just hated that. That was not what he had in mind at all. So that was the beginning of the jazz age. You couldn't stop that once it got started. So that's why I like to play Jelly Roll Morton style right after Scott Joplin, because it gives you a little bit of contrast. There was another regional style of ragtime that was very popular. That's the New York style. There was a fellow by the name of U.B. Blake, and he did ragtime in the New York style. It's a little different. I'm going to play an excerpt anyway from a piece by a very well-known New York ragtime piano player named James P. Johnson. He later became a jazz player and was Fats Waller's teacher. I can't really repeat the name of this on the air. It's a family show, so I don't.
No, it's not.
I don't dare to. But if you look up James P. Johnson, his famous tunes, the first word of this one is if. I-F. You'll get some idea. James Johnson, New York ragtime, early jazz. Anyway, that's related, not really related to boogie woogie, as you can probably tell, but this stuff was all going on at the same time. Now, boogie woogie was originally called fast western because it was common out in the territories, out in Texas and Oklahoma. It was basically blues, just amped up a couple of notches, and suitable for dance music, serious dancing. Which is one reason it's easy for people to learn, easier for people to learn who are trying to break themselves from the habit of reading only notes. There's very limited patterns in the left hand. You have to practice them and get good at them, but it doesn't take you a year or two to do it. One of the patterns is this one. You can do a lot with that. Once you learn the right hand, which is harder, another nameless boogie woogie, but I want to show you that that's the beat. That's the fast western beat that was so popular in dance halls and turpentine camps and places like that. Anyway, the blues was originally on a guitar-based instrument. It's commonly now electric. That's the Chicago blues style, Muddy Waters, and made really popular by Stevie Ray Vaughan, where it's really related to rock and roll. And the British invasion with the Stones and John Mayall, people like that, who really reintroduced the blues to white Americans. So the original style of blues, called Delta blues or country blues, there's a guy around here that does a great job with it. His name's Dan Stevens. He plays...
Good friend of ours.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He plays rural blues. Like the old blues players, he makes a lot of his instruments. He's got a cigar box guitar that he made with parts from Sears and a smoke detector for a pickup or something. It's really wild. And he's got several homemade instruments. Well, that's what these old blues guys did. They didn't have pianos. Back in the days of slavery, there were no pianos in the slave quarters. They might have a banjo, they might have guitars. Piano's a latecomer to the blues, so piano players made the best of it. They couldn't really sound like a guitar, but they could play a lot of strong rhythm, and they could strum. If I could sing, without embarrassing myself, I would do so, but I will not. But this is the part where they would sing. They're doing something really simple, like a guitar. So the right hand does the singing. Blues was a vocal music. All about women and cheating, shooting and lying. Just like country music is about trucks and dogs. But the country music mixed with the blues, it would be something like this. G, if anybody's noticing. I don't know, just it's my favorite key. Let's try something in F. Oh, let's do E flat. This is a piece, it's a compilation of James Booker songs. James Booker was a great, great New Orleans piano player, died about 25, 30 years ago. Studied with Professor Longhair, and his style combined classical and blues, which is maybe one of the reasons I really like him. This is a piece I call Booker Boogie. Technically it's my piece, but it's full of his riffs. We'll see if I can do it justice. Thank you. A little bit of James Booker style, if you will. Not anywhere near as good as he did it, but lots of fun to play. And you don't hear it too much. I don't know why. Probably because it's kind of hard to play. Let's do Dot described some of the music that I do as ambient, which I think is a fair description. This is a piece I wrote a long time ago for my wife, Maggie. It's called Only the Sweetness. It's a little light jazz, a little bit of new age, maybe. Change of pace there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a little different. Sometimes when you do music that's not edgy jazz and it's not edgy classical, there's really no place to put it in the current industry. So the category of New Age was expanded a few years ago. Originally, New Age music was waterfalls and birds and whales, and maybe there's a space genre of New Age music which has a lot of synthesizer sounds and kind of, it's very ambient. But what happened when the people didn't know what to do with some of this music, they just decided to lump it all into the New Age category. So now New Age has a wide range of stuff that you might be surprised to find. So I think that would probably be put in the New Age category. We've got time to do, what do we got here?
Yeah, do one more song and then come over and talk.
All right, I'm going to do an improvisation. And when I say improvisation, it's all improvised. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do. Classical people think jazz players do improvisation, which they do. But they'll improvise on a set tune. My favorite things, Blue Moon, and they each take a solo and they make it up and then they come back. Well, totally improvised music is what they did back in Beethoven's time and earlier even, where a piano player had to play for a whole evening and make up the music as he or she went along. And if they couldn't do that, they didn't have a career. Anyway, it's tough to do and it's not always golden, and some of my stuff falls flat on its face, so we'll hope this doesn't. I should have asked for a key or something so you'd know I hadn't prepared this. So you just have to trust me, I'm not lying this time. Like I said, not all golden. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do I bring it with me?
Yes, please. So, catch me scratching. This has been Glen Harding, and he's going to come over and talk with me. And oh my goodness, I have so much to ask you and so much to talk about. I have to tell you that song you wrote for your wife just sent me to another place.
Okay.
It was absolutely amazing. Actually, can I ask you for a copy of that for my radio show?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I would absolutely play that on my radio show in a minute.
Oh, good.
In a
Well, I'll have to
minute.
see if I can play it again the same way. It has about 10 different versions.
That's not a bad thing. So I was thinking about, after you and I spoke the other day, I was thinking about where I had actually seen you play the first time. I actually met you at the Blues Festival, but I actually saw you on stage playing, and I may be wrong. I know where I saw you, but I can't remember who it was you were playing with. It was at the Nick, and I'm not sure who it was you were playing with that night, because you played with a bunch of different people.
Well, I'm pretty much down to mostly Johnny and the East Coast Rockers right now. I've been playing with Johnny for over 20 years, and I think if it was at the Lick, it was probably with Johnny Band, either the quartet or the quintet. Sometimes we have a sax player.
Yep.
Lately, we've been doing a lot of quartet jobs. Johnny, myself, drummer, bass player. So.
I think that Greg Piccolo was also there, and he came up and did a couple of songs with you also.
He's been known to do that, yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
he's pretty amazing
Fun to
also.
work with, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about your history with music. When was it that you actually felt the music? When you felt like you needed to start playing, whether it was piano or whatever it was you were playing at first, when was it that that came to you?
Very early. I had a little bassinet, as I guess it was called, that was next to the piano. I have a much older brother who was 17 when I was born, and he was a piano player, and he still is, a clarinet sax player. And he would play the piano. I was right there, bring me up on his lap and show me how to do basic stuff. My hands were too small, but basically I got the idea from him originally that one can make up one's own music and you don't have to play strictly what someone else has written. So he would make up little animal songs, and I can still play a couple of them anyway. So that was an inspiration. He left home, gone. I had nothing, so my mother, out of desperation, got me a piano teacher who came next door, teach the kids next door to sort of take up the slack, and I started taking when I was about 4, a little over 4, and took ever since pretty much until 21, 22.
And did you go to school for music after that?
I did. I went to a small conservatory, University of the Pacific Conservatory in California.
That's a great school.
In Stockton, yeah, near San Francisco. That was the problem. It was a little too near San Francisco. I didn't graduate. I did 2 years, and I spent all my time at the Fillmore and the Avalon. And,
gee, I wonder why.
and I did all kinds of things that were extracurricular activities. So, but I did continue studying serious classical music, piano. I was there on a piano scholarship, but the handwriting was on the wall. I wanted to do other stuff, and the story that is very vivid in my mind. One day I was in the practice room at the conservatory, and I was playing something like that last concoction that I played, and my piano professor, German professor Dr. Fetch, threw open the door, was very excited, asking, "What's that?" And I sort of sheepishly said, "Oh, I'm just making it up." And his face turned to a scowl. He says, "Wasting your time, get back to Brahms." And the message was that I'd been getting all my life, you don't do your own music. I mean, in the classical world. Now, in popular music, it's entirely different. I mean,
at first he was excited.
He was excited. He liked it.
Right.
He liked it. But after he found out it was his wayward piano student goofing around, it was a different story. So that made a big impression on me, and it contributed to my just saying, "This is nuts. I'm leaving." So, plus, there were demonstrations to go to. There were events to hitchhike. There were all kinds of things. So I kind of threw in the towel in the academic world. I came back to it later on my own, studying. But
I think we all kind of do that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I understand that being a piano student, you would have been given Scott Joplin to play. I remember very early in my piano days being taught The Entertainer and not being able to master it, which is how it was for everything I did in music.
Yeah.
Which is why I promote music instead of play music, because I can't play it. But what gives you such a love for Scott Joplin? Because I love Scott Joplin.
Well, Scott Joplin was really in a great position at that time, because prior to that time there were no black composers. Now, Joplin was adamant that he was a composer. He wasn't a songwriter,
right.
Which meant he considered himself to be a modern-day Mozart. Now, the white music business had other ideas, but nonetheless, money is money, and it's all green. And so he was able to have a career, and he published his stuff. He wrote it out meticulously, and he wrote phrasing, just like Mozart, dynamics, just like Mozart and Beethoven. Everything was right in place, and it was a hit. It was a smash hit.
It really was.
And it's a synthesis, really, of African rhythm and European marches. If you listen to the left hand, whether it's the Entertainer or the one I played, the Maple Leaf, it's oompa. It's oompa. It's what we would be listening to now if it weren't for black music in America. We'd be doing marches and parades.
Right.
And Joplin brought in the African rhythm in the right hand with the funny business of the syncopation. And it took off like wildfire. And so he became quite wealthy and successful. And people went to him for guidance, including white pianists. There's a famous ragtime guy named Joseph Lamb,
who idolized Scott Joplin. He was white, and Joplin made his career. Joplin took him and said, okay, that's what we do. They all worked together. So Joplin particularly he was a stand-up guy, really talented, extremely talented, and inspiration, very inspirational.
Absolutely. I recently heard that on eBay, a single piece of his original music was sold for several $1 million.
Yeah, boy.
So that's really cool. The blues is something that you do now on a regular basis.
I do.
But you teach young people.
Yes.
Do you start teaching them right away the blues, or do you teach them really, I want to say Thompson-ish?
Yeah, that's what I did, Thompson.
Yeah.
I do both. It really depends on the parents and it depends on the child. Some parents really want their kids to do the classical thing, learn to read music and play the finest, as they say, in European music. Others just want their kids to love music. And in the old days, the piano teachers were probably, like in my case, I never had a piano teacher give me Scott Joplin. That was trash music.
Right.
I had a teacher, when I played Boogie Woogie for her when I was 10, I first just learned to play Boogie Woogie. She said, if you keep playing that trash, you will undo everything that we have been working for.
Wow.
I was, what do you say to a 10-year-old boy? If you tell him that, he's probably going to go do it anyway. But still, my dad wanted to hear Boogie Woogie. My
Yep.
dad was from Texas.
Yep.
And he put up with Bach and Beethoven until I was about 10 or 11 and asked if I could play some Boogie Woogie or Ray Charles or something. And I said, if you get me the music, I could. He did, I did, and that's how I started playing Boogie Woogie. My mother was classical, my dad was country and blues. So I had two people I wanted to please.
I think that for me also, my mother was kind of unconventional, and my grandparents on both sides were very, very strict Northern Baptist music.
Ooh, yes.
So I had a Baptist piano teacher at the age of 4.
Oh, my.
And yeah, and I got rapped on the knuckles the whole
Oh,
time. Yeah, right?
I don't get that.
Yeah, it's not. So if you get to go out and you're with Johnny and the East Coast Rockers, and Johnny says to you, we're going to start with what you want to start with tonight.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't do that very often. But when he does, what is it you choose to play
I
and
would
open with?
probably play like that first piece I played tonight. It was the Rumba Boogie kind of stuff. I like that style, and I would play some kind of boogie woogie, some kind of real piano music. Wind players, horn players, and string players get really tired of piano players. We're really obnoxious sometimes because we got the 10 fingers going, and we sometimes think all 10 have to be going at the same time. And we can do that. Hey, I'll do that. But string players can't do that. Horn players can't do that.
Right.
Not that they necessarily would want to, but the attitude that piano players sometimes have is that like the world is made of black and white keys, and we own it, and listen to us.
You're not going to get much of an argument from me.
Yes,
there's 2 instruments in the world, the piano and the cello.
Ah.
And then there's voice.
And then there's-
So I'm pretty stuck on those. My genres go
Oh, that's
all
a
over
good
the place.
combination, though. They work
cello
well
and piano,
together,
I'm really
too.
happy with them. Other than teach piano and play on stage, do you have hobbies that you like to engage in?
I'm not much of a hobby person. I did a lot of woodworking over the years. I even had a period where I was building musical instruments, building harpsichords.
Really?
I worked with, Jake Kaiser, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, Jake. I worked with him at Zuckerman
He's a
Harpsichords.
very dear friend of
And,
mine.
yeah, we worked together there, and that was actually that turned out to be a profession too, kind of. So it's technically not a hobby. I don't really have a hobby. I mean, it's all music, unless I'm forgetting some side of my personality that just happens.
So if you're sad,
Yeah,
you can sit down at the piano and fix that.
pretty much, or get into it even more and make some art out of it.
Okay, well, that's a good thing.
It may not fix
Yeah.
it, but usually it does. Yeah, usually
One
it
of the
does.
things that we've all, and I've talked about it on this show many times, what music is and what composers such as yourself do for middle of the road, nobody's like me, is you take our emotions that we don't know what to do with,
Yes.
and turn it into something that we can actually, that is actually tangible.
Yeah.
You take an emotion that I don't get, and when I hear it, I know
You
it.
know it. That's the thing about art. It's been that way since
The beginning of
cave
time.
paintings,
Yeah, yeah.
probably. That it really has to have some kind of, I would call it a transcendent quality. In other words, it could take you out of where you are and put you somewhere else, if not physically, at least mentally and emotionally. And that's part of the thing about being, if you're wired to do this kind of stuff, you know, sometimes you feel like a weirdo because you're not wired to do other things. Like I can't
Right.
throw a football to save my soul, but it's a matter of just being able to, you're sort of representing what lots of people may feel.
And don't
but
know how to express.
Yeah, poetry is
Exactly.
another thing. You know,
Right.
my wife is a poet, and she can write a sonnet in 20 minutes.
And do you two put your
We-
work together?
We've done that extensively. In fact, we just did a concert last November at the Noack Baptist Church in Noack.
With
All-
Fred
with
Molesky
Fred
singing.
Molesky singing. She was the featured soloist, and James
Absolutely.
Hunter played bass, and we had a fellow high school student from Waterford play cello. And
I watched that.
yeah, it was
amazing.
I've got several others to put up. I haven't put them up on the website yet, but.
I can't wait.
So yeah, we collaborate. We've done a lot of collaborations over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes simple poems, sometimes cycles of poems,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be more of that.
So maybe I have to invite you and her back together
We
to
could-
do a show around the poetry and the music and how they represent each other and how they come together. Especially with a couple, I think that would be a neat way to do a show.
Yeah.
Does that sound good
We'd
to you?
be
We'll do
delighted.
that. We'll do
Yeah,
that.
would be good.
I want to talk about some of the blues things going on when you get ready to go back over and close us out. But if you could leave a legacy, which in my opinion you're already doing, but let's rewrite that for a minute. You are the only person left that knows music. Okay? The world has come to the end, but there's going to be a beginning. And the new generation is only going to know what you leave for music. Now, this is a hard question, so take it for a minute and tell me, as a legacy, that's the only legacy that people are going to learn from, what are you going to leave behind? You have about 10 pages of music and no recordings.
No, that was my question. So if we go back-
Nothing recorded, just 10 pages of music and maybe some written stuff.
So-
What are you going to do?
If it's got to be written down, only written, and then I would only be able to do notation that I'm familiar with, which is
Mm-hmm.
Western music notation, treble clef, bass clef stuff. So I would make sure that we had a sampling and fair representation of the highest European art from earlier centuries, including
Mm-hmm.
the Renaissance and Palestrina, Bach, Beethoven, the big names.
yeah.
And I would really want to move right on into music like Greek music, making sure that people understand the Middle Eastern scales, how they were used, and certainly African music with the harmonizing that goes on there. So it would be a pretty full plate, but I would move, coming up into the 20th century, we'd have to have jazz, we'd have to have blues, and certainly all forms of folk music. How can I just say all music? No, how do I do
But you
that?
can't.
I can't.
You have to leave a legacy that people will take and grow from. But I think that what you've just said is the way that most teachers would absolutely want to leave.
Yeah, you want to
Please
cover the bases.
take this and experiment with it
Yeah.
and learn from it.
Yeah.
I am more than blessed that you decided to come and do my show today. I wasn't sure where it would go because our conversation was minimal.
It
but
was.
It was. I'm very excited. I really want to get your stuff. Do you have any shows coming up that people can come and see you at?
There is, I should know, but I don't have it memorized.
Is there a
Check my
website we can-
Check
yeah.
my website,
Yeah.
hardymuse.com,
Yep.
HARDYMUSE.com, and there's a performing page that has everything. Mostly it'll be with Johnny and the East Coast Rockers these days, but I do have any other solo concerts will be there too. But we
Okay.
do have Knickerbocker gigs coming up
Yep.
on Wednesday nights. It's a dance night. Less expensive and earlier evening, I believe. And we also play at a place down in Madison called Donovan's. It's a big kind of upscale sports bar. They have a Hammond B3, just like the Nick.
I love that piano.
And we'll be playing at the Stonington Vineyards Wine Festival this summer.
Do you know if you're playing the Blues Festival?
They didn't put us in this year. I'm not sure why,
Nope.
but
That's a whatever thing.
that's a whatever
It's
thing.
going to be a
and,
great festival anyway.
I'm sure it will be. They have a lot of
So
good people.
why don't we move back to the piano and you'll be able to take us out. We have about 5 minutes. 7 minutes, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that are going on. Hopefully you guys are just getting home from some of these shows, and go ahead and go over. Thank you so much, Glenn. I could talk with you for hours, so maybe we shall do that. So some of you are tuning in right now after seeing Kev Mo tonight at the Guard. I hope you got out and saw that show. If you didn't do that, I hope you went to the Blues Blizzard at the Hannon Hatch VFW, because those shows were probably the biggest shows of the night. There was a bunch of other shows. Jeff Pitchell played tonight, and Sonny Boy played tonight, and the New York Funk Exchange was also in Manchester. But tomorrow night, you can still get to do some music. Nick Moss is at Bridge Street. Dan Stevens is at the Benjamin Musso Coffee House in Stafford Springs. The Cobalt Rhythm Kings Jam is at Cafe 9, and Petey Hop Jam is at MTK Tavern in New York. Those are Sunday night shows. Monday night shows, the Rocky Lawrence is at Annie Leffy's. Hobo Express is at Stella Blues. The Carolina Chocolate Drops are at Narrows Center in Fall River, Mass. And Tuesday night, Orb Melon is at Cafe 9. The Blues Challenge is coming up. The harmonica competition thing is at Black Eyed Sally's. I believe that starts next weekend, so make sure you check in on that. Every Friday night at Hannafin's down on State Street in New London is Friday Night Blues. There's a whole run of different blues artists that come in and play that. Please check that out. That's Hannafin's keeping it local, and you know how I feel about local and live. Every Wednesday night out at the Nightingale's Acoustic Cafe, Dan Stevens does a pick-and party. And if you play guitar well, go. If you play guitar not so well and you want to learn more, go there. And some open mics that are every single week. Buckley House has an open mic. Monday night is Hungry Tiger, June's Outback Pub, Lucy's Lounge, and Black Eyed Sally's Jazz. Tuesday night at the Hideaway. Wednesday night, Black Eyed Sally's, the Cypress, Outer Space, Infinity Music Hall, Theodore's, and Caddy's Tavern. That's all acoustic, by the way. Thursday night, the Nick Cafe has open mic, and if you want to be part of that, you can go call there and be the host band. The Good Life, CJ Sparrow, Hammerdown, Pine Loft, Southwest Katina, and Sunday, Caddy's Tavern, Cafe 9, Sally's Pub, and the Stomping Ground. Those are all open mics and jam sessions that you can get in on. So, without any further ado, thank you so much for tuning in to Grandma's live music review, and back to Glenn. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, my pleasure.
Can't wait to see you again.